Hello and welcome back. My name is Rebecca and today I'm so excited to show you using these vinyls how we're going to do an inspired composition notebook tumbler. So for this tumbler design today, I am going to be using this 12 by 12 black palm leaves vinyl from BAMF Custom Creations. This vinyl for her will be launching this Friday on April 29th. And for my border, I decided to go with the teal holographic, gorgeous color for a little touch of color from TeckWrap craft vinyl. And remember, you'll want to remove that protective plastic film before you get started on your project. So the first thing we want to do is place our border. Now I cut my border at 1 inch wide, and I think this is a personal preference to how big or how small you'd prefer your border to be. You'll also notice that I'm going to line it up with the bottom of the tumbler, therefore I will only have to trim this once up at the rim. Once you have your border placed, you can go ahead and trim the rim. When using an X-Acto knife, you want to make sure it's nice and sharp as it makes this a whole lot easier. So now it's time to go ahead and wrap the palm leaves. So to get started, I'm just going to take this edge and buddy it right along against my border. Then I'm going to use the bottom of the tumbler as well as my holographic vinyl as my guide. You'll want to take your time when placing this vinyl. You want to make sure that you do not have any air pockets. If you have air pockets, you will see that when you apply your coat of epoxy. So just take your time and use your squeegee on the velvet side as you progress wrapping this around the tumbler. And not to worry, if when you're completely done wrapping this around the tumbler and you do come across air pockets, you can simply use your weeding pen to pop those out. Once you've met up with the other side, we're just going to go ahead and trim off that excess, which I've already done, and then I'm going to kind of pull back just to make sure everything is nice and tight on this back side and smoothed out without wrinkles. You do want to be careful when pulling on this vinyl, as it can stretch and distort. You don't want that to happen. Once I've smoothed everything out on this back side, I'm going to use my X-Acto knife and just trim off that excess. Once we've removed all that excess vinyl, we can now trim the rim. Once you have everything nice and tightened up, this tumbler does not need to be sealed and is ready for its first coat of epoxy. So for this first coat of epoxy, I'm going to add in my favorite snow caps additive from AB Designs right into my fast set from Counterculture DIY. This tumbler is touchable in 2 hours, but I always wait about 3 hours before I start applying my decals and my vinyl stripes. As always, make sure you use your heat torch to pop any bubbles that you may or may not be able to see. Okay, so you can clearly see this was an afterthought. I thought of this idea as my tumbler was turning to kind of tone down that border and allow some of that green to come through with this vinyl. So had I originally thought to just add this over top of the holographic vinyl before, I clearly would have just wrapped the whole tumbler. So that's the blessing of making tumblers, is you can kind of change your mind and change up things as you progress. I thought of this idea, like I said, as it was turning, and I'm like, yes, 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 this is a must do. Next time I'm thinking I'm just going to wrap the entire tumbler because I loved the way that this looked over the holographic vinyl. Again, it just brings some subtleness to that holographic, and yet that section still stands out. So for my vinyls, I decided to go ahead and use the black holographic from TeckWrap craft vinyl, and I made these super teeny tiny. I mean, the width of these things are like 0.083. So just super tiny, just elegant, just enough to distinguish that border and enhance it just a bit more. So for my decal design, I chose to go with the school paper. This school paper printable vinyl comes from AB Designs. When you click that link down below to purchase, make sure you choose your material style, as she does now offer both clear cast options as ones with the white backing. I also chose to do an offset to incorporate that holographic. My offset size was set at 0.08. So now that I have my decal placed with my offset, now it's time to add the teacher's name. Now that we have finished dressing our tumbler, it's now time to go ahead and tape off this bottom rim. Once I tape off the bottom rim, I'm then going to go ahead and use parchment paper to wrap and protect the rest of the tumbler so I don't get overspray on the remaining bits of my tumbler. Once I've painted my tumbler, I will immediately remove the parchment paper as well as the tape. I will allow this to fully dry before I move on to the next coat of epoxy. So for this coat of epoxy, I am again using the Fast Set from Counterculture DIY. This beauty only took one more final coat and she was completed. Let's give a huge shout out for Teacher Appreciation Week starting May 1st to May 8th. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I do hope that this tumbler inspires you to create something very incredible for that special teacher you know.